Before the world called her the fastest woman alive, before she lit up Olympic tracks with a grace that defied gravity, Wilma Rudolph was a child forgotten by fate. In a town that barely blinked at suffering, in a family struggling just to survive, Wilma's life began as a whispered warning: she might not make it through the night. Born prematurely on June 23, 1940, in the segregated town of Clarksville, Tennessee, she was the 20th of 22 children, weighing only 4.5 pounds. Her first battle was simply to breathe. She survived that night and many more that seemed like they shouldn't be survived. As a toddler, Wilma faced every illness the world could throw at her: measles, mumps, scarlet fever, double pneumonia. But it was polio that changed everything. The disease twisted her left leg and foot until she couldn't walk without a brace. Doctors said she never would again. In the segregated South, where Black families had little access to healthcare, her condition wasn't just tragic, it was treated as a death sentence for her dreams. But Wilma didn't come from a family that accepted fate without a fight. Her mother, Blanche, believed in a truth stronger than any medical opinion. 3 times a week, she took Wilma on a 90-mile round trip to Nashville's Meharry Medical College, one of the few hospitals that treated Black patients. At home, her brothers and sisters massaged her leg daily, working her muscles back to life with tender determination. By the time Wilma was 8 years old, something unthinkable happened. She removed her leg brace and began to walk. No one told her she was ready. She simply decided that waiting for permission wasn't something she could afford anymore. The girl who once needed steel to stand was suddenly moving under her own power. It was clumsy, it was painful, but it was hers. Walking turned into running, not fast, not smooth but free. At school, Wilma began playing basketball, and although she lacked skill, her speed was undeniable. Her high school coach noticed it first. While most girls ran with the wind, Wilma was the wind, raw, untamed, and hungry to fly. She practiced relentlessly, often without proper shoes or equipment, just the burning desire to be more than what the world expected from her. At a local track meet, a college coach named Ed Temple spotted her. Temple was the head coach at Tennessee State University, where he built champions from shadows. He saw Wilma not for her past, but for her promise. He invited her to train with his team during the summers, even though she was still in high school. She accepted quietly, seriously, like someone making a deal with destiny. By 16, Wilma qualified for her first Olympics in Melbourne in 1956. She returned home with a bronze medal in the 4x100 relay. To the world, it was impressive. To Wilma, it was just a hint of what she could do. She wasn't finished, not even close. The girl who couldn't walk had just started to run, and the world hadn't seen anything yet. Training under Coach Ed Temple wasn't just hard, it was transformative. Temple didn't coddle his athletes, he sculpted them, forged them, like iron in fire. And Wilma Rudolph, now a teen with something to prove, didn't want comfort, she wanted greatness. She showed up to Tennessee State University each summer like a ghost in track shoes, quiet, focused, present. Her body, once held captive by illness, had begun to stretch and sharpen into something formidable. She was tall, lean, and impossibly fast. Coach Temple saw what few others did. He saw pain, but more importantly, he saw purpose. If you can run, he told her, you can win. But if you can suffer, you can be a champion. Wilma understood. Her entire life had been suffering. She was ready for the rest. After her bronze medal in the 1956 Melbourne Olympics, Wilma came back to Clarksville with a suitcase full of ambition. Most girls her age were settling into life, jobs, marriages, families. Wilma, barely 17, was settling into something far more dangerous: potential. Her town didn't throw her a parade, there was no celebration. No one asked her what it felt like to be an Olympian. In Clarksville, Wilma was still a Black girl in a segregated world, but inside her, something had changed forever. She had stood on the world stage. Back at Tennessee State, she joined the famed Tiger Bells track team full-time. Every morning began with bruises from sprint drills, from weighted laps, from punishment runs when she missed a step or blinked at the wrong time, but she took it all. Her speed grew sharper, more violent. She learned how to lean into the wind, how to conserve just enough for the final push, and she learned something else, how to win with grace. Then, in 1958, the unthinkable happened. Wilma became pregnant. For many athletes, especially a woman in the 1950s, this was career suicide. Rumors flew, critics sharpened their tongues, but Wilma kept running. She gave birth to her daughter and returned to the track not weaker but stronger. She trained harder. She ran faster. She was no longer running for herself. She was running for a future her own and her daughter's. By 1960, Wilma Rudolph was a quiet storm of talent. She had crushed national records. She had left crowds breathless. And now, she was headed to the Rome Olympics with fire in her lungs and steel in her legs. The world wasn't ready. Rome was electric with anticipation. It was the height of the Cold War, and politics clung to every race like humidity. But Wilma wasn't interested in politics. She was interested in history. In her first event, the 100-meter dash, she exploded off the blocks like a slingshot. Her body unfolded like silk-long strides, head high, no wasted movement. She crossed the finish line with daylight between her and the competition. Gold, the fastest woman in the world, but she wasn't done. Next came the 200-meter, more distance, more pain, but Wilma made it look like poetry. She flowed around the curve, surged down the straightaway, and left the rest in her shadow. Another gold. The final event was the 4x100-meter relay. A shaky baton pass almost cost them everything. But when Wilma got the stick, she turned disaster into legend. She flew down the track, correcting the deficit, closing the gap, then surging into first like it was always hers. Third gold. The girl who once limped through the dirt roads of Clarksville had become the first American woman to win 3 gold medals in a single Olympic Games. And still, her greatest victory was yet to come. Rome changed everything. The Olympic Stadium, packed with over 80,000 people, became the stage where Wilma Rudolph rewrote history. Her 3 gold medals weren't just victories for her country, they were statements. She wasn't just fast, she was mythic. In a world where Black women were often silenced, Wilma made her statement with movement. With each race, she erased doubt. With every medal, she claimed space that once excluded her. The press, mesmerized by her poise and speed, dubbed her the Black Gazelle. In Rome, people stopped her on the streets for autographs, reporters clamored for interviews, heads of state wanted photos. At just 20 years old, Wilma was a global icon. But beneath the glitz of international fame, she remained grounded. She knew where she came from. She knew what it had cost to reach this moment. When she returned to Clarksville, everything felt unfamiliar. The same streets where she once limped in leg braces now prepared for a parade. But Wilma made a bold decision. She told the city she would not attend unless the event was integrated. At the time, no public gathering in Clarksville had ever included Black and white citizens standing together. Wilma didn't just demand a celebration, she demanded change, and the city listened. Clarksville's first integrated public event was a parade honoring a young Black woman who had once been told she'd never walk again. That day, she didn't just march, she led. Wilma didn't stop there. Fame gave her a microphone, and she used it. She traveled the country, speaking to children, especially young Black girls, about possibility. Never underestimate the power of dreams, she told them. You are capable of more than you can imagine. Despite offers to extend her athletic career, Wilma chose retirement in 1962. She was only 22. She wanted to leave on her terms, at her peak. She wanted to prove that you didn't need to cling to the spotlight to hold power. That same year, she published her autobiography and began teaching. She worked with young athletes and mentoring girls from poor communities. Her next race was against ignorance, poverty, and injustice, and she ran it with the same determination that once shattered Olympic records. Over time, Wilma became more than an athlete. She became a symbol. A former president called her an American heroine. Schools were named after her. Statues were raised. But for Wilma, the real victories were the girls who came after her, the ones who ran without fear, who saw themselves in her and believed that greatness wasn't reserved for the lucky, but earned by the relentless. In the late 1980s, Wilma was diagnosed with brain cancer. The disease moved quickly, as if time itself had decided she had done enough. She passed away in 1994, at the age of 54. The world mourned, but her story didn't end. Her legacy etched in every gold medal, in every speech she gave, in every girl who laced up her shoes and dared to dream remained alive. Because Wilma Rudolph had never been just a runner, she was a movement. Even after retirement, Wilma Rudolph's life remained in motion. She was never comfortable standing still, and the flame that had once driven her across finish lines now fueled a deeper purpose, inspiring others. She knew her medals shimmered not just with athletic excellence, but with the hard-earned glow of defiance. Every step she took now was about opening doors for others, especially for Black children growing up in the same kind of poverty and silence she once knew too well. She started working in education, guiding young people with a calm intensity. To them, she wasn't just a legend, she was real, present, and unshakable. She didn't speak in slogans, she asked questions, she listened, she made them feel seen. And when she looked at them, she saw warriors in the making, not just athletes but thinkers, leaders, and creators. Wilma also became a global ambassador for women's sports. She traveled to developing countries, often using her own resources, to promote physical education and gender equality. In Africa, in Asia, in South America, she sat with young girls who had never heard of the Olympics and told them stories. "You don't have to be fast," she'd say, "you just have to move forward." In 1983, she was inducted into the U.S. Olympic Hall of Fame. The honor was official recognition of what many already knew: Wilma's life was not defined by moments, but by movement. She kept pushing, even off the track, and yet, for all her accomplishments, Wilma remained humble. Fame never settled comfortably on her shoulders. She preferred sneakers over heels, classrooms over podiums, connection over celebrity. When she was invited to speak at colleges or appear on television, she always redirected the spotlight. "There are thousands of Wilmas out there," she often said. "I was just lucky enough to be seen." Then came the illness, brain cancer. It struck quietly, like a thief in the night. By the time it was discovered, it had already begun its slow unraveling. But even as her body weakened, her spirit didn't falter. Friends remember her as smiling, comforting them instead of the other way around. "I've had a good run," she'd say, echoing the rhythm of a lifetime spent racing the odds. In her final days, she asked not to be remembered as a runner, but as someone who never gave up, and that's exactly what the world did. After Wilma Rudolph's passing in 1994, her story didn't fade, it intensified. News outlets aired montages of her Olympic triumphs. Schools in multiple states renamed buildings in her honor. A bronze statue of her was erected in Clarksville, Tennessee, right where people once told her she'd never walk. But her true legacy wasn't in stone or speeches, it lived in the quiet echoes of progress that followed. You could hear her legacy in every gym where girls lined up at the starting line, unafraid. You could feel it in every classroom where a teacher told students that greatness often comes disguised as struggle. You could see it in Serena Williams, in Simone Biles, in Allison Felix, athletes who owned their power and carried the invisible torch Wilma lit decades earlier. Her life became a curriculum, a case study in resilience. Historians wrote about how Wilma didn't just break athletic records, she broke the rules of what a poor, black, disabled girl from the South was supposed to become. She didn't protest with picket signs, but with power. She didn't riot, she ran, and every time her feet left the ground, so did the limits placed on people like her. Clarksville, once the town that doubted her, began to teach her story in schools. Former classmates and skeptics became storytellers. passing down tales of the girl who outran impossibility. One teacher said, "We used to whisper about how frail she was. Now we shout about how fierce she became." In death, as in life, Wilma gave people permission to move, to rise, to believe, and her most powerful lesson remains simple: it doesn't matter how you start, it matters that you keep going. This wasn't just a motivational quote stitched onto gym walls. It was gospel. It was blueprint. It was a reminder that we're all racing something: our past, our fear, our limits, and that finishing strong is always within reach. Wilma once said, "Winning is great, sure, but if you are really going to do something in life, the secret is learning how to lose. Nobody goes undefeated all the time." And that was the heart of her story. Losing, failing, falling, and getting up faster every time. So when people remember Wilma Rudolph today, they don't just remember her as the fastest woman on earth. They remember the girl who limped before she flew. The girl who was told no and turned it into history. The girl who didn't just run races, she redefined them. In a world full of noise, Wilma's legacy speaks softly but powerfully. Your struggle does not define you, your stride does. And it's that stride, that fierce, unbreakable stride, that still moves the world forward.